I've been married to Jessica for over 7 years. We were the kind of couple that everyone admired, young, successful, and very much in love. We lived in a cozy house just outside San Diego, complete with a white picket fence and a dog named Max. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but as they say, looks can be deceiving. Over the past few months, I started noticing small changes in Jessica. She'd always been the life of the party, but lately, she seemed distant and preoccupied. She would be texting late into the night, often giggling at something on her phone. At first, I thought she was just immersed in some new hobby or chatting with old friends. But deep down, a nagging voice in my head was telling me something was off. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd give me the same vague answers. Oh, just busy with work, or nothing much, just hanging out with some friends. It didn't add up. She wasn't as active with her social life, and when she did go out, she seemed to be in a rush to leave. I tried to brush it off, but the more I noticed, the more I couldn't ignore it. Then one Saturday, I had plans to play basketball with some friends. I texted Jessica in the morning to see if she wanted to join me for breakfast before I headed out. She responded almost immediately, saying she had a last-minute session with her psychologist. I had never heard of this psychologist before, and when I asked her about it, she vaguely mentioned that the guy was helping her with some personal issues. In hindsight, it was a red flag. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the way she said it felt rehearsed, like she'd crafted that excuse many times before. I shrugged it off, thinking she was just going through a rough patch. After breakfast, I went to play basketball, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't subside. I found myself thinking about that psychologist and wondered why she hadn't mentioned him until now. Later that day, I decided to do some digging. I started by checking her phone. I know. It's not the most ethical approach, but when your gut is screaming at you, it's hard to resist. I felt like a detective on the hunt for clues. I found her phone on the kitchen counter and my heart raced as I unlocked it with her birthday, her go-to password. I first checked her texts. There were a few conversations with her best friend, but nothing too alarming. Then I opened up her messaging app. That's when I found a thread that made my blood run cold. It was with someone named Dr. Mark, and some of the messages were very flirtatious. "I can't stop thinking about you," one text read. Another said, "I wish I could see you outside of our sessions." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I quickly closed her messages and tried to regain my composure. My mind raced as I pieced everything together. Jessica had been cheating on me with her psychologist. The very person she trusted with her personal problems had betrayed her trust and mine. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief wash over me. I had to confront her. This wasn't going to be easy, but I needed answers. I remember pacing around the house, trying to figure out what to say. How could she do this to me? I had always supported her, and this was how she repaid me. I decided to wait for her to come home. I was nervous, but I was determined to confront her about Dr. Mark and what I had discovered. My heart was racing as I thought about the confrontation ahead. Would she deny it? Would she try to spin the story? All I knew was that I needed to hear it from her own lips. When Jessica finally walked through the door, I could tell something was off. She had that nervous smile on her face, the one she wore when she knew she had done something wrong. I took a deep breath and called her over to the couch. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but filled with tension. As she sat down, I could see the confusion wash over her face. I stared her down, preparing for the storm that was about to unfold. From that moment, my world shifted dramatically. I felt as if I was standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to fall into an abyss of betrayal and heartbreak. I was ready to hear the truth, but I had no idea how deeply this revelation would cut me. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey that would lead me down a path I never expected, one filled with intrigue and ultimately revenge. As I sat there looking at Jessica, I could feel the tension in the room thickening like fog. She sensed my seriousness and tried to lighten the mood, but I couldn't let her escape this. "Jessica," I said firmly, "I know about Dr. Mark." Her expression changed instantly. The nervous smile evaporated, replaced by wide eyes that darted around the room as if searching for an escape route. "What do you mean?" She stammered, the words barely escaping her lips. I pulled out my phone, ready to show her the messages. Don't play coy with me, Jess. I saw the texts. You've been seeing him outside of your sessions, haven't you? The accusation hung in the air like a lead weight. I watched as her face turned from surprise to a mix of anger and guilt. Okay, fine, I've been seeing him, she finally admitted, crossing her arms defensively. But it's not what you think. Her voice became frantic as she tried to explain herself. He's been helping me with my stress and we just got close. I didn't mean for it to happen. Close. I shot back, raising my voice without thinking. You call that close, telling him you can't stop thinking about him, wishing you could see him outside of your sessions. That's not a therapy relationship, Jessica, that's an affair. Her eyes narrowed and she opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. What were you thinking? You're married to me. I've supported you through everything, and this is how you repay me, by sleeping with your psychologist. She looked down, guilt flooding her features as she struggled to find the right words. I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? I was feeling so lost and alone, and he made me feel seen. You've been so focused on work lately, I just needed someone to pay attention to me. Every word was like a dagger, twisting deeper into my chest. So you thought cheating was the answer. That's your solution. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She started to cry, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could manage it, but it just spiraled out of control. I love you, I do. The sincerity in her tears was undercut by the sheer betrayal I felt. Love? You call this love? You let another man into our marriage, and now I'm supposed to believe you still love me. The confrontation spiraled into a whirlwind of accusations, excuses, and raw emotions. I felt anger and betrayal coursing through me, but I also felt an overwhelming sadness. I loved Jessica, but how could I trust her after this? As the night wore on, I knew I had to make a decision. I could feel the weight of our years together pressing down on me, but the thought of her lying and cheating was unbearable. I wanted to believe her words, that she hadn't meant for it to happen, but a part of me was screaming that it didn't matter. Ultimately, I decided to step away from the situation and give myself time to think. I can't do this right now, Jess. I need space. Her face fell, and I saw the panic in her eyes. She reached out for me, but I stepped back. Please don't leave, we can fix this, she pleaded, but I couldn't even look at her. I felt like I was watching the woman I loved dissolve before my eyes. I walked out the door and into the night, needing to breathe to escape the turmoil inside me. I spent hours driving aimlessly, my mind racing. Trust had been shattered and my heart felt heavy with grief. How could I ever face her again? I thought about the years we had shared, the dreams we had built, and the love that now felt tainted. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled over at a park and let the tears flow. I was angry, hurt, and confused. My heart felt like a battlefield, and I was the casualty, grappling with the reality of my marriage falling apart. It was in that moment of despair that a thought crossed my mind: revenge. The idea surfaced slowly, like a dark shadow creeping into my consciousness. I didn't want to hurt Jessica. I wanted to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. If she was going to betray me with her therapist, then maybe there was a way to expose the unethical behavior that had led to this affair. I knew I had to think strategically. If Dr. Mark was crossing professional boundaries, it would be my responsibility to ensure he faced the consequences. He had taken advantage of Jessica's vulnerabilities, and I would not let him get away with it. That night, I made a decision that would set me on a path I never thought I would take. I was going to make sure Dr. Mark would pay for what he had done, not just to me, but to countless others who might have fallen into his trap. Little did I know that this decision was the first step in a plan that would unravel the very fabric of my life, turning my heartbreak into a journey of revenge. The moment I set my mind to exposing Dr. Mark, a sense of purpose washed over me. I was no longer just a heartbroken husband. I was a man with a mission. I spent the next few days gathering my thoughts and formulating a plan. I didn't want to rush into this. I needed to think carefully about how to proceed. The first step was to research the psychologist. I wanted to know everything about him, his practice, his credentials, any complaints lodged against him. I spent hours online, diving into websites, reviews, and forums where former patients shared their experiences. It was tedious work, but I was fueled by anger and betrayal. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Dr. Mark had a decent reputation. His online persona was that of a compassionate and caring therapist who had helped many people through their struggles. But a few reviews stood out. Some former patients mentioned feeling uncomfortable during their sessions, and one even hinted at inappropriate behavior. That was the lead I needed. Feeling invigorated, I decided to take the next step. I reached out to a few of these former patients, posing as someone seeking therapy. I wanted to hear their stories firsthand and gather more evidence. I crafted an email, carefully outlining my concerns and asking if they would be willing to share their experiences with me. To my surprise, a couple of people responded. One woman, Claire, invited me to meet her for coffee. She had seen Dr. Mark about a year ago and explained how he had crossed lines that made her uncomfortable. I was in a vulnerable place, she said, her voice shaky. I thought he was supposed to help me, but instead, he made comments that felt too personal, too intimate. I ended up leaving because I felt like he cared more about his own ego than my healing. Her words struck a chord with me. I understood the power imbalance in a therapeutic relationship, and Dr. Mark had exploited that. I asked her if she would be willing to share her story with a governing body, and she agreed. I could feel the pieces of my plan starting to fall into place. As the days went by, I continued to gather evidence. I contacted a few more former patients who shared their experiences, and I documented everything meticulously. I felt like a detective building a case, and with each new piece of information, my resolve strengthened. I wasn't just going to expose Dr. Mark. I was going to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. During this time, I continued to have limited contact with Jessica. She reached out multiple times, desperate to talk and mend things, but I remained distant. I wasn't ready to face her yet. I didn't want to get pulled back into her web of excuses and lies. Instead, I focused on gathering evidence and formulating a strategy to ensure Dr. Mark would be held accountable. Finally, I had enough information to take action. I gathered all the evidence, emails, reviews, testimonies, and prepared a detailed report. I found the licensing board that oversaw psychologists in our state and drafted a formal complaint against Dr. Mark. It was a nerve-wracking step, but I felt empowered. I was no longer just a victim, I was taking control of my narrative. When I hit send, a sense of relief washed over me. I had done my part. Now it was time to wait and see what would happen. I knew there would be an investigation, and I hoped it would lead to consequences for Dr. Mark. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, the same weight I was carrying every day. But as I settled into this new purpose, I couldn't ignore the nagging feelings I had about Jessica. Despite everything, I still loved her. I knew I had to confront her eventually, but I wanted to do it on my terms when I was ready. Days turned into weeks, and I kept myself busy with work and gathering more evidence for the investigation. I felt a strange satisfaction in my revenge plan, but it didn't come without a price. I was losing touch with myself, drowning in anger and resentment. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up against someone who had exploited the trust of vulnerable individuals. Then one night, as I sat alone in my living room, I received an email update from the licensing board. They had received my complaint and were initiating an investigation into Dr. Mark's ethics and practices. I felt a surge of excitement, but it was quickly overshadowed by a wave of dread. What if nothing came of it? What if he was able to manipulate the situation and come out unscathed? Still, I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I had come too far to turn back now. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I would confront Jessica about everything, including my plans for Dr. Mark. It was time to stop hiding from the truth and face the consequences of her actions openly. The next day, I invited her over to talk. I needed to know if she was truly remorseful and if there was any chance of salvaging our relationship. As much as I wanted to stick to my course of revenge, A part of me still held onto the hope that we could find a way through this mess together. As I prepared for our conversation, I was filled with a mix of anxiety and determination. I knew there would be no turning back after this. The confrontation would reveal everything, and I hoped, against all odds, that it would lead to some form of closure for both of us. Little did I know, the conversation would unlock emotions I had buried deep within, forcing me to confront not just her betrayal, but also my feelings about the entire situation and what I truly wanted moving forward. The day of our confrontation arrived, and I found myself pacing the living room, mentally preparing for what was about to unfold. I glanced at the clock. Jessica was supposed to arrive any minute. My heart raced, a mix of anxiety and anticipation coursing through me. I knew this conversation would be a turning point, a moment where everything could change. When I heard the doorbell ring, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Jessica stood there, her face a mixture of hope and trepidation. She wore a simple top and jeans, looking as familiar and beautiful as ever. But beneath that facade, I could see the guilt and fear swirling in her eyes. "Hey," she said softly, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the click echoing in the silence that enveloped us. "Thanks for coming," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I gestured toward the couch. "Let's sit." As we settled in, the weight of unspoken words hung between us. I could feel my heart pounding as I prepared to lay everything out on the table. "I've been doing some thinking, Jess," I began, my voice calm but firm. "About everything about us, and Dr. Mark." Her expression shifted to one of uncertainty, and she nodded slowly. "I know I messed up, and I'm so sorry. I've been trying to think of how to fix things." "Fix things?" I echoed, feeling the anger bubbling up again. "You think it's that simple? You cheated on me." The words left my mouth with a sharp edge, and I saw her flinch. "You crossed a line I never thought you would." "I know," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was overwhelmed, and he was there for me in a way you were." There it was again, the justification, the deflection. "You're saying it's my fault for working hard, for trying to provide for us." I leaned forward, searching her eyes for the sincerity that seemed to be slipping away. "How can I trust you again, Jessica? How can I believe anything you say?" "I'm not asking for your trust right now," she replied, her voice cracking. "I just want you to know that I love you and I never wanted to hurt you. I was confused and made terrible decisions." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm despite the storm of emotions raging within me. "Do you even understand what you've done? You let someone else into our marriage, and now I'm left picking up the pieces. It's not just about you anymore, it's about what you've done to us." "I know," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, I want to make it right, just give me a chance." I leaned back, crossing my arms as I considered her words. There was desperation in her voice, a genuine plea for forgiveness, but could I give that to her? I had to be honest about my own feelings. "I've been thinking about this a lot, about Dr. Mark and everything that's happened." She looked at me, her eyes wide, waiting for me to continue. "What are you saying?" "I filed a complaint against him," I said, watching her reaction closely. "I can't let him get away with what he's done, Jessica. He violated the trust you placed in him. He took advantage of your vulnerability." Her expression shifted from surprise to fear. "What do you mean? What will happen to him?" "I don't know," I replied, my tone steady. "But I hope he faces consequences. People like him shouldn't be allowed to practice. He's a predator, and I won't stand by while he destroys lives." Jessica's face fell, and I saw the realization wash over her. "And what about us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What does this mean for our marriage?" I paused, weighing my options. My heart was torn between the love I still felt for her and the betrayal that had shattered my trust. "I don't know, Jess. I'm still processing everything. I need time to think." "Please," she begged, reaching out for my hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll go to therapy, I'll work on myself, on us. Just please don't give up on me." Her touch sent a jolt through me, but I pulled my hand back, not wanting to get sucked back into her emotional turmoil. "It's not that simple. Trust takes time to rebuild, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I get it. I never wanted to lose you. I love you." As I watched her cry, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions crash over me. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her that we could work through this, but the other part was still raw with anger and hurt. I couldn't just erase what had happened. "I need you to understand something, Jessica," I said, my voice steady. "You've broken my heart and I don't know how long it will take to heal. I'm not saying it's over, but I can't promise anything right now." "I'll wait for you," she said softly, determination shining through her tears. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, even if it takes months or years. I just want a chance." As I looked into her eyes, I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could either choose to fight for what we had once built together, or I could walk away and let the betrayal define my life moving forward. The truth was, I wasn't ready to make an irreversible decision, but I also couldn't ignore what I had set in motion with my plan against Dr. Mark. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my power, and I would see it through to the end. "I'll think about it, Jess," I said finally, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. "But for now, I need space to process everything. I'll reach out when I'm ready." With that, our conversation faded into silence, both of us grappling with what had been said and what lay ahead. In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. The road to healing would be long and difficult, but I was finally standing up for myself. The question now was whether it would lead to reconciliation or a permanent separation. Only time would reveal the answers we both sought. After that conversation with Jessica, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, anger, and an undeniable sense of empowerment. I knew I had taken a step toward reclaiming my life, but the road ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty. I needed time to process everything and focus on my own healing. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from Jessica. She respected my need for space, which surprised me a little. There were no desperate calls or messages. Instead, she seemed to be giving me the room I needed to think. I appreciated that, but it also made me realize how fragile our relationship had become. I threw myself into work, using it as a distraction from the reality of my personal life. I focused on my projects, and while I found some solace in my career, I knew I couldn't ignore the emotional turmoil brewing beneath the surface. I had a lot to unpack, and avoiding it wouldn't make it disappear. One evening, as I sat at my desk, I received an email update about the investigation into Dr. Mark. My heart raced as I clicked on the message, reading through the contents with bated breath. The licensing board had acknowledged my complaint and was conducting interviews with former patients. They wanted to gather more evidence to determine whether disciplinary action was warranted. This was it, the moment I had been working toward. I felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was quickly followed by a wave of doubt. What if the investigation fell flat? What if Dr. Mark managed to spin everything in his favor? The thought gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside. I had done what I needed to do. In the midst of the storm, I also received a call from Claire, the woman I had met earlier who shared her experiences with Dr. Mark. She wanted to meet up again. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation," she said. "I'm willing to support you in this. I think we should gather more people who have been affected by him." Her enthusiasm was infectious. I agreed to meet her, and we started discussing ways to unite former patients and share their stories. We organized a small group that met regularly to share experiences, and it felt powerful to have a support network. Together, we were determined to hold Dr. Mark accountable. During this time, I also found myself reflecting on my relationship with Jessica. I still loved her, but the betrayal loomed large in my mind. I thought about the moments we shared, the laughter, the dreams. Could I ever get back to that place? Or would I always see her through the lens of her betrayal? One night, I found myself staring at an old photo of us, taken during a weekend getaway to the beach. We looked so happy, carefree, and in love. I longed for that feeling again, but it felt like a distant memory, buried beneath layers of hurt and mistrust. As my feelings oscillated between hope and despair, I realized I needed to confront not just Jessica, but my own emotions as well. I couldn't let anger dictate my decisions. I had to find a way to process my feelings if I ever wanted to move forward, whether that meant working on our relationship or letting it go. With that realization in mind, I reached out to Jessica and asked her to meet for coffee. I wanted to have an honest conversation about our feelings, the pain, and the path forward. and we met. The atmosphere was tentative, a mix of hope and uncertainty hanging in the air. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but filled with earnestness. "I've missed you." "I've missed you too," I replied, taking a deep breath, "but I still feel so conflicted about everything." She nodded, her expression understanding. "I know I messed up and I'm so sorry. I've been reflecting a lot too. I realize I hurt you deeply and I want to do better. I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve." I appreciated her honesty, but I had to be cautious. "It's going to take time for me to rebuild that trust, Jess. I can't just forget what happened." "I get that," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes, therapy, counseling, anything. I want to work on myself and I want to work on us." Her vulnerability struck a chord with me. It was clear she wanted to make amends, but could I truly believe that she had changed? "I don't want to rush this process," I told her. "I need to see real change, and I need to take care of myself too. I've been focusing a lot on the investigation into Dr. Mark, and that's where my energy is right now." Jessica's face fell slightly, but she nodded in understanding. "I respect that. I just want you to know I'm here and I support you." Her words meant a lot, but I still felt an undercurrent of fear. What if my decision to pursue revenge against Dr. Mark led to more chaos? Was it possible to hold him accountable without jeopardizing my own emotional well-being? The conversation continued, weaving through emotions of guilt, sorrow, and tentative hope. We talked about what we both wanted out of our relationship, and I realized that, while there was a possibility of healing, it would require patience and effort from both sides. As we wrapped up our coffee, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to navigate this pain together. But the journey wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, moments of doubt, and painful truths to face. I knew that the investigation into Dr. Mark was still ongoing, and it would undoubtedly impact my relationship with Jessica. I had to prepare for whatever consequences might arise. But as I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to confront the chaos in my life, to fight for what I believed in, and to determine the future I wanted, whether that meant reconciliation or liberation. The path ahead was uncertain, but I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life, and I was determined to see it through. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself navigating a tumultuous sea of emotions. The investigation into Dr. Mark continued, and I was receiving updates from the licensing board, but it was the emotional fallout from my relationship with Jessica that weighed heaviest on my mind. The support group I formed with Claire and other former patients gained traction. Together, we shared our stories with the board, and it felt empowering to give a voice to those who had been silenced. It was a healing process for all of us, sharing our pain and experiencing solidarity in our struggles. But with every meeting and every conversation about Dr. Mark, I felt more of my anger toward him surface. He had taken advantage of vulnerable individuals, including my wife, and I was determined to see justice served. Meanwhile, Jessica was doing her part. She attended therapy and began to engage in self-reflection. At times, I could see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the caring, thoughtful partner who had been buried beneath layers of confusion and betrayal. Yet every time I saw progress, the memories of her infidelity crept back in, reminding me of the pain I had endured. The trust we once shared felt like a fragile glass, ready to shatter with one wrong move. We had a few heart-to-heart conversations where Jessica expressed her deep-seated remorse and commitment to earn back my trust. She started a journal to document her healing journey, and she invited me to read it whenever I felt ready. I appreciated her effort, but I was still filled with doubt. Could we truly move beyond this? Was there a way to rebuild our relationship, or were we just prolonging the inevitable? One Friday evening, as I sat at home reviewing the latest correspondence from the licensing board, I got a call from Claire. "We did it," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "The board has decided to suspend Dr. Mark's license pending further investigation. This is huge." I felt a rush of exhilaration wash over me. We had taken a stand, fought for justice, and it was paying off. "That's incredible news, Claire. Thank you for everything you've done to help make this happen." As we hung up, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. I had begun this journey seeking revenge, but it had morphed into something greater, an opportunity to stand up against unethical behavior and support those who had been hurt. It felt validating to know that my actions had ramifications and that Dr. Mark would face consequences for his indiscretions. The following day, I decided to visit Jessica. I wanted to share the news with her, and I felt a twinge of hope that maybe this would mark a turning point in our relationship. When she opened the door, I could see the worry etched on her face, but as I began to explain the developments with Dr. Mark, her eyes lit up. "Wow, this is amazing," she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight embrace. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of warmth in my heart. "I'm so proud of you for taking action." We spent the evening discussing the implications of the investigation and how it might affect both of us. The more we talked, the more I realized that our lives had become intertwined with this situation in unexpected ways. The pain had forged a strange bond between us, and while I still felt guarded, I began to see a path toward healing. That night, as we sat on the couch, I brought up her journal. "I've been thinking about reading it. I want to understand where you're at and how you're processing everything." Her eyes widened and she nodded slowly. "I'd like that. It's been a really important part of my healing." I picked up the journal from the coffee table and began to read. Her words were raw and genuine, detailing her struggles, her feelings of guilt, and her commitment to changing. This vulnerable side of her opened a window into her heart that I hadn't seen in what felt like forever. As I read, I began to feel a shift within myself. I realized that while I couldn't erase the past, I could choose to move forward. The love we had shared wasn't gone. It was buried under layers of hurt and betrayal, but it was still there, waiting for us to nurture it back to life. Over the next few weeks, we continued to communicate better than we had in a long time. We both began to understand the importance of honesty and vulnerability in rebuilding our relationship. I learned to express my feelings without fear of judgment, and Jessica became more open about her struggles and how she had been feeling. The investigation into Dr. Mark progressed, and I learned that he would likely face disciplinary action, although the full extent of the consequences remained uncertain. I felt a sense of closure when I heard the news, a vindication for all of us who had suffered at his hands. One evening, as Jessica and I took a walk under the stars, I paused to look at her. "I know it's going to take time, but I think we can work through this," I said, my voice steady. "I still love you and I want to try." Tears filled her eyes and she nodded earnestly. "I love you too, and I'm committed to doing the work. I know I hurt you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." That night, we made a pact not just to each other but to ourselves. We committed to honesty, healing, and rebuilding our relationship, brick by brick. It wouldn't be easy and there would be bumps along the way, but together we would face them, learning to trust and love again. In the end, we both emerged from the struggle transformed. I had learned that healing takes time, and while the scars of betrayal remained, they served as reminders of our journey. Jessica and I had faced the darkness together, and from that darkness, we were forging a new path toward a future filled with hope. Life isn't perfect, and love isn't always easy, but I understood now that it's in the struggle that we find our strength. And as I walked hand in hand with Jessica, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that we were stronger together.